Hi, I'm Julia. Welcome to my garden. Today is Monday, May 6th, and I am here in my Vermont garden in Zone 5, and I'm going to give you a tour of the berry garden and orchard. My kids are playing nearby, so you may hear sounds of bikes and children, and there's lots of loud birds and such, so enjoy the ambiance. I'm going to start with the berry garden here, which I'm standing in front of. I started this garden in the spring of 2019. I have a video here on how I created it. And if you're coming from that video, welcome. We are just about 5 years later, and it's still a work in progress. Pretty much every bed in my garden around my house is a work in progress, so you'll see that as I go. But in the front here, we do have our blackberry fence. These are thornless blackberries. I have two varieties that alternate. I believe it's Triple Crown and Nelson. I will double check and have them linked below. And I believe I got them both from Norse Farms. And I am training them along this fence here. It's just 4x4s we put in the ground. My littlest is 3, and he is learning to ride a bike with training wheels, and they are very loud. So that's what you're hearing behind me, but this is the time I have to film. So we're gonna go ahead and let them have fun on their bikes. We have 4x4 posts in the ground, which I then attached eye hooks and wire to. So it's kind of hard to see the wire unless you're really up close, but there's 2 levels of wire, and I tie off the blackberry canes to that wire. They can grow pretty crazy. I just did a clean out of them a day or 2 ago, and I don't think I did one last year. So they were really quite crazy. There's 2 sections here, 2 plants that are a little bit more sparse this year, but they will grow in. Blackberries have primocanes and floricanes like raspberries. I will link to my raspberry video here to learn more about that. But basically, primocanes are first-year canes and floricanes are second-year canes, and my blackberries fruit on second-year canes. So what you see now is the growth from last year that has leafed out and is alive, and it will shoot new canes up this year, so it will fill in. The canes that you see now are what we're going to get fruit off of. These blackberries, again, they're the thornless variety, and they are zone 5, and I am a zone 5. And so the issue that I've run into is that while the roots are fine over our winter, when it gets as cold as we can get, our lows generally in the winter, the canes don't always survive. So we've had kind of a spotty harvest the last few years. I'm hoping for a good harvest this year though, because we only got down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit this year, which is like a zone 7 here in the United States, USDA zone 7. So there's many more canes that have leafed out and are alive, and I'm really excited for our harvest this year. And I also put some violets in these containers when I cleaned up the blackberries. I think it's a really nice fresh spring look. There are also some strawberries that have come back from a few years ago. When I planted up my green stalk initially, I pulled strawberries out of this area because I covered it with cardboard and compost and cardboard and mulch. But some of them survived apparently, and so there's some random strawberry plants in there. There's also a few tulips coming up from last year just on one side. Those are Queen of the Nights. So hopefully those will bloom, and then I'll probably move them. And I'm actually thinking of doing a more full tulip display in front of the blackberry fence next year. I think that could look really pretty. Behind the blackberries are my blueberries. So I have 4 groups of 4, so 16 in total. They weren't all planted at the same time. So the first year I planted 9, so 3 groups of 3. And then the year, maybe 2 years after that, I added ones on the ends and then also planted another row. And that last row did not do well and actually was replaced with new blueberries last year. I also just replaced one on the front right end this spring. So some of them are smaller than others. Right now they're all doing well. I did weed. The grass comes back so fast. I did not weed the middle sections, as you can probably tell. Ideally, we'd have a brick path going down the center of the berry garden from where my pansy containers are to the rose circle, and then little paths of bricks going through the middle of the blueberry beds. And I might put at least 1 pot in the middle. We'll see. I have some ideas, but that will be cleaned out later. It was just more of a priority for me to weed around and give some blueberry fertilizer to my blueberries. And I did fertilize them this spring with a blueberry blend from Fedco Organic Seeds. So it's supposed to be like a more acidic blend, which is important for blueberries. In between the blueberries, I actually planted American cranberries. And so I'm hoping those will grow and become a ground cover. So all but one that I planted last year survived, and I replaced that one that didn't survive this spring. And then, yeah, I'm just hoping that they grow and kind of root out and can start competing with the grass a bit. Beyond the blueberries, in the middle is my rose circle, and that has climbing roses on the arches and shrub roses and then strawberry ground cover. And I like to put other flowers in there as well. On either side of the rose circle are 2 raspberry beds. I have 4 different varieties of raspberries, but I have Killarney, which is a summer-bearing red. I have a Purple Royalty, which is a summer-bearing purple. It's not a black raspberry, it's still like a red raspberry type, but it happens to be purple. I have Anne, which is a yellow, and that's a fall or everbearing. And I have Heritage, which is a red fall or everbearing. And I talk more about raspberries in my pruning raspberries video that I did recently, so I'll link that here. They are leafing out. I've only gotten to weeding 1 bed, unfortunately, so far, so I need to go back and do some more weeding, cleaning out. There are some areas where the raspberries are looking a little spotty, a little sparse. And on my Ann yellows, I saw the leaves are falling off, or I don't know what's going on with those canes. I'm a little concerned, so I'll be looking more into that. And I feel like it may have happened in past years as well. I just can't remember. So anyway, some more work needs to be done on them, but that's gonna be work for another day. As it is, they are all growing, and so hopefully we'll get some fruit this year. So here in the rose circle, I do have climbing and shrub roses and strawberries, and I have pruned and fertilized the roses this year. I have not gone, I need to go through and clean out the strawberries. They're a little too thick and choking stuff out. Maybe trim up the boxwoods a little bit just to see if there's any winter damage, but I do still want them to grow, so I'm not gonna do a lot of trimming on them. And I want to plant some annual flowers in here, both in the containers and in the ground. So I will be working on that. I might also start putting some more perennials in as well. So there's not as much to do each year as far as bringing back annuals. So kind of a funny thing, we did we weeded all in where the gravel is and then tried to refresh some of the pea gravel here. And we thought we got the same bags we normally did. And then when we put them out, realized like afterwards, they always come out dirty. So once they wash off, I thought they were gonna lighten up. They're definitely slightly different size and a different color. They're much more of a dark gray than the ones we originally used. So I haven't really done anything with it yet. I just left them. So it's kind of patchy right now. In the future, I'm hoping to get a few more bags of just the lighter kind that we had before, and then try to mix it in together a little bit more so it all looks the same. But for right now, that's just what it is. This spot here is perfect for having a cup of coffee or tea and a snack. I do like to bring my planner out here occasionally and sit and watch the kids and my husband play, and I'll plan or just sit and enjoy a drink quickly. Usually I then get up and start working in the garden. It's also a handy spot to keep my garden tools. It's kind of like a central location. So when I was out here working on the blackberries that I recently cut back and the roses, I had all my supplies here ready to go for when I needed them, as well as my drinks, my water, my coffee. So it's a great little spot here, and yeah, it's just gonna keep getting better. So I'm very excited about it. I do have some pots in here. I might add some more. I have rosemary that comes inside, so I actually need to harden that out and start bringing that out. I have some chives coming back here that have buds on them, and I planted some bunny ears, violets there. And then I don't know if this little boxwood is gonna survive or not, but I'm leaving it for right now. So we'll see what happens. This spring, I did get to edging out with brick half of the outside of the rose circle. You may see that the inside's been all edged, and I did clean that up, the inside, when we weeded. But the outside edge hadn't been done. I'd meant to do it last year and didn't get to it. So I'm determined to get it done this year, and I've gotten half of it done so far. So there's just always a lot of tasks that need to be done in the spring. So like figuring out what's the most important can be hard. I actually did a lot of it like in some light rain. So yeah, well, hopefully by the end of the season, the goal is for the outside to all be done, and hopefully as many of the beds in the berry garden to also be edged with brick. And I think that'll help a lot with our grass encroachment problem. When I created the berry garden 5 years ago, I had 2 cherry trees I planted in the back here. The rose circle wasn't there at the time, but I had always envisioned something being in the middle. So it was behind that. And then there were rows of honeyberries I planted on either side of that. The idea was to make a hedge in the back to kind of form a garden room. Now, over the years, we have added more honeyberries because I thought some were dead. And last year, I replaced the cherries that were not thriving with these service berries, which I absolutely love. I'm so glad they came back beautifully this year. And then this spring, I am actually rearranging the beds in the back. I am grouping the honeyberries into groupings. There's one side that has 3 and the other side has 5. And then I transplanted a couple of the honeyberries into my orchard, and I'll show you when we get there where those are. I also transplanted some junipers. So these were actually, the winter before last, were in pots outside of my breezeway, and they got some damage from snow, just like bending over the limbs and such. So I stuck them out in this area out here that I had started creating some sort of a woodland garden. And this spring I transplanted them again. Luckily they seem to be doing okay with that, to either end of these beds here. So these beds are sister beds. They're not exactly the same, but they will have some of the same plants and some different things. And I have lots of ideas. Some things I'll add this year. I won't be able to fill the beds up this year, but in the future I'm hoping to fill these beds up with more shrubs, maybe even some more berries and perennials. The honeyberries have been blooming for several weeks now. They have these really pretty yellow blooms that kind of hang down. I believe they're actually related to honeysuckle. And yeah, so I'm really excited to see that, especially the ones I transplanted. I transplanted them a little bit later than I wanted to. They had already started to break dormancy, and I decided not to cut them back really hard. I haven't done much pruning on my honeyberries. I just did a little bit of a light pruning this year. And yeah, I'm gonna hope, my goal is to weed around them a little bit better, give them some compost, and so far I've seen a lot of flowers, so hopefully there's some berries. I did see at least one little tiny berry starting to form. It really just also depends if the pollinators have been out and able to pollinate them. Just like with blueberries, they need pollinators. So I have several varieties in each clump, and you could kind of tell some of them have different growth habits. It's kind of fun to see. And I know what most of them are, and I'm gonna get the labels just like the blueberries, but I haven't quite done that yet, so I need to do that. And there's like, I think 1 or 2 that I'm not 100% sure on, so that just is what it is. But that's great. And then the service berries they're just kind of going off the top of their bloom, like the peak bloom. I think was a couple days ago actually, and then we got a bunch of wind and rain yesterday and this morning, and so it blew some of the blossoms off, but you could see some of the tiny buds forming. It is gorgeous out today, and the bees are out. Saw this little bumblebee out on the service berries, really enjoying it today. So I am loving them. I'm so happy they've come back pretty strong. It's also been so nice to see that bloom from the house, that pretty white bloom. And I'm hoping to try a berry this year. I didn't try one last year. I think they might have been cleaned up by the birds pretty fast. So I'm gonna have to be more on top of it this year. The area here behind the berry garden, I'm calling it my woodland garden. And in here, I started putting some trees last year, and these are mainly for wildlife and ornamental. And there are a couple edible varieties that I've been putting in. So last year we put in some birch. I planted a blue spruce back there. The junipers have been back there. I talked about those have moved. And I think that was it back there last year. So about a week ago, a little more than a week ago, I planted, I think 17 trees in this area and out around. I'm going to try to show most of them to you. So one, I have some footage of, it's actually over, I'm looking at it this way now. So on the side of the berry garden, it's actually on the other side of the berry garden. Now we have this stone structure that was for a fire pit and grill kind of thing. I'm actually hoping to take that down soon. And over in that area, I planted a Kusa dogwood, and these are not native, but it's related to our dogwood, and I believe they're Japanese. They're at least from Asia, and they get these really cool fruits that are like little pink golf ball size, like slightly spiky fruits, and you eat the insides out. And so I just thought that sounded really cool. They look really cool. And even though they're not native, I believe the pollinators and birds may enjoy them as well. Then back behind here, I did replace one birch that I think had just been over nibbled by deer. I had ordered some others because I wanted to add on to it, so I replaced that one, and then I planted two kind of right next to each other, so they will eventually kind of form a clump. So back in the middle, there's a little birch grove I'm trying to create. And then I planted a Dolgo crabapple, and that's a crabapple that's been bred to be edible. So a lot of crabapples are bred to be ornamental. You can still eat a lot, most of them, if not all of them, but they're not bred for tasting very good. And these are supposed to be slightly bigger than the normal crabapple and be really good for making especially things like jelly. So we've got the crabapple tree on this side here, then we've got the birches in the middle. The center is still kind of open. I have some ideas of what I want to do there, but I'm not sure yet. Right now, we're just kind of mowing me and the guy who helps mow around them to just let them grow a bit. And then my ideal would be to have a path going back there around and create a woodland garden. So adding more shrubs and woodland plants. But I think right now we're just focusing on letting the trees grow. I planted a redbud, an American redbud, Cercis canadensis. We are at the very top of their zone. They are such a great native and like great tree for both ornamental and wildlife. And so I really wanted to try one. It's not doing anything. It's just sitting there. It's still a little bit bendy, so I'm giving it some time. I will be keeping my eye out. I haven't seen a lot at our local nurseries, but I'm gonna keep my eye out to see if I see one this year. I might end up replacing it if it doesn't do anything in the next couple months. I did plant a forest pansy redbud that we'll see later in the tour last year, and that's budding up. So I would hope to see it doing something now, but they bud up before they leaf out. So we're gonna give it some time. And then beyond that, we have a pagoda dogwood. Cornus is the Latin, like the family name for the dogwoods, and I can't remember what the exact varieties are. I'll see if I can figure out the Latin names and have them for you here. But it's a pagoda dogwood, and that one is native. It's more of an understory tree. It's in the sun right now, but eventually we'll get a little bit of shade from the birches, and it is great for wildlife and great ornamental. So that's there. Beyond that, way in the back, I planted an Illinois everbearing mulberry. I did try to plant a mulberry last year and it has not done well, and it's still in its spot where it was. We'll see what it does. I'm not expecting much, and I'll probably end up pulling it out this year if I don't see anything. But I got that Illinois everbearing in there. It has some buds. Fingers crossed it does well. I am going to go out hopefully this coming weekend and actually encircle the trees that are on the edge, like farther out, with some fencing, because they do get some deer browse. And I can imagine if I was a deer, I would enjoy a mulberry tree. So yeah, it's just a whip right now, just straight up and down. It had a very deep root, like tap root, and I got it bare root. It was kind of hard to plant. So it's kind of high. I mounded up around it. Hopefully it all works out well. Again, fingers crossed, pray that it roots in and is happy there. And then let's see, what else? Oh, while I knew my trees were coming, I got a big bare root order of trees from Fedco. That's what most of the ones I've been talking about are from. I did stop at my closest nursery. I do love them. I had a great conversation with one of the workers there, and I picked up a couple magnolias and a prairie fire crabapple. So here in Vermont, we have such a long winter, and magnolias are some of the first blooms of the season, and they are absolutely beautiful. And so we're actually just past their bloom time. They're beautiful. Like a couple weeks ago, I was driving around. They're just absolutely gorgeous. So I picked up a couple. Hopefully we'll get to see a beautiful show next year. I got an Ann magnolia, and that one stays pretty small. I think it's like 8 to 10. It's more of a shrub. And so I planted that behind a clump of honeyberries here. And I should say that one has pink blooms, and it blooms a little bit later, so hopefully than other magnolias. So hopefully we'll be more insured to see some blooms. And then I got a butterfly magnolia. Butterflies or butterfly? I don't know if it's plural. And that has yellow blooms, and it gets a bit bigger, like 30 feet. And so I'm really excited to have those in there. Prairie fire crabapple was on my wish list, but I was hesitant to buy one online. They were pricey, and when I've gotten some trees from, like, you know, some places potted up, not bare root, not Fedco, I haven't had the best luck. And I wanted a really beautiful one. And then I was trying to figure out the ones in our area. When I went to nurseries, they were kind of big, so expensive, and I was trying to figure out how to get them in my car. So when I went to pick up the magnolia, I just kind of took a look and asked about the prairie fire crabapples, and they had some nice small ones. I think it was like a 7-gallon that I could get in my car. She wrapped it up for me and helped me. Like, I actually got it in my sedan. It was amazing. And it is all budded up right now, and I'm so excited to see the blooms. It's going to be gorgeous. And prairie fire crab apples they have slightly darker leaves, and they get bright pink blooms. And so it's kind of behind the basketball court, and we'll be able to see it, and it's just gonna be a pop of color. I did want to pause and mention something. That is, right now it still has this bamboo stake that's attached to it very securely and the guard on. Now, a lot of my trees have guards on that I put on in the fall. And I will be taking those off soon. You don't want to leave them on year round, but I was just giving them a little time. So they will be probably coming off within the next week or so. This I'm going to take off. You don't want to leave these on the tree too long. It can affect growth. But I did get a couple tree staking kits. So this is one I'm probably going to stake. I have some that are leaning that I'll point out. Peach, the forest pansy redbud, and maybe one of my apples that are also going to be staked. I forget how many kits I have. So this one, the redbud and the peach are the top 3 priorities here, because we do get a lot of wind, which is why I do have a lot of trees that are leaning, and I just kind of embrace that. They're a little bit imperfect, and imperfect is beautiful. It's kind of hard to see, but back to my left here is the Illinois everbearing mulberry, and then to the right here is one of the apples we planted last year. I will link that video here. It's how to plant bare root trees, and we planted 3 apple trees in that video back behind our kids' playset. So I'm gonna go back in this direction next and kind of do a loop before we look at all the beautiful blooms in the first part of the orchard that was planted. We are back towards the eastern side of the property. Our property goes back quite a bit more into the hayfield that a local dairy farmer uses for hay. So I can go a little bit farther back with plantings, but I don't have any immediate plans to. We planted these apple trees last year, as I said, and the one closest to me is a Black Oxford, and then we have a Calville Blanche de Vere, and then we have a Golden Russet. They all had kind of a rough year last year. It was a very wet year, and so they got some sort of fungus or bacteria going on. That some of the trunks were black, and they still are black, and so I was worried, especially about the Calville Black de Vere. They also got nibbled on. I think what happened was they usually hay the field twice, once in the spring and once a little later in the summer. And the second time they hayed, I think it pushed a bunch of the animals this way. It took out their cover and some of their food sources, and then they started nibbling on my trees, and they hadn't been, and then suddenly I was worried that some of them were girdled. These apples and my apricots that I planted last year were all nibbled, and yeah, I really thought 1 or 2 of them was actually girdled and wasn't gonna come back, but they all have come back. So I didn't prune them or anything, and so I'm gonna have to go back. There's some really low branches, there's some dead branches that I'll take out, but they're pretty young, so I don't wanna mess with them too much, and so I kind of just left them because I didn't know if they were gonna come back or what the deal was gonna be. So I'm just so thankful that they look like healthy for right now, aside from some of the damage you can see from last year, and they're actually budding up and getting ready to bloom, which I'm kind of amazed at. And I did plant a daffodil mix around the base of them last fall as well. I'm hoping that will help with the probably vole damage as well, because they do not like the daffodils. We're now kind of in front of the place that we've moved around in a circle, and I'm near one of my apricot trees here that I planted last year, and there's one right over there that I'll show you as well. And this one I was really worried was dead because it looked like it had been girdled, but look at this. Not only are they both alive, but they actually both bloomed. Now, they mostly bloomed, especially the other one, right before we got that hard frost. So I'm fairly confident we're not going to get apricots this year. And actually, I was surprised they bloomed. I wasn't expecting any this year, but oh my goodness, was it beautiful. I did put the daffodils around the bottom. They're just so pretty. I love them. It's a mix I think I got from Longfields Gardens. I will figure out what it was and have it linked below. I love putting daffodils around. They naturalize in our area and they're just beautiful. I cut them and bring them inside and all that. So because I was worried that this apricot was dead, I purchased another one because it is at least better. I'm not sure if apricots will give you fruit on their own. Like I know the peaches will, but it's better to have a companion. And I don't know if that's true of apricots or if they need one, but either way, it's better to have a pollinating partner. So I did get another one that could pollinate the one that I was pretty sure was okay. And since they both survived, the ones from last year, I just planted the third kind of out in between this apricot and the golden russet apple that we were just looking at. So there it is. It just kind of looks like a stick right now, but it does have some buds and leafing out. So it is alive. When I first planted it, like a week or two after I planted it, it did get like there was some animal digging up around it, but it seems to have survived that okay. I went and put some more soil down. My guess is a skunk. I've seen one occasionally around here. I mean, not the best creature to have, but we try to live with the wildlife the best we can, as long as they're not harming us or my gardens or anything. So, and of course back here, I also have some elders, and they're doing okay. They're not doing nearly as well as the one I have in the potager. I am intending to make more of a purposeful bed in this area. We'll get to it. You'll see this area out here in the orchard, I haven't really worked on it all. I did a little bit of pruning of trees in late winter out in the orchard. I kind of get halfway through the pear tree. It needs like more of the water spouts taken off, but it is what it is. So I'm working my way around. I have a lot of goals for this year, a lot of kind of structural work, a lot of digging that needs to be done. So you'll just have to follow and see how far I get, but I don't want to not show you the beauty because it's not perfect. And hopefully that gives you some encouragement in your garden as well. I don't know if it'll ever be perfect. Just keep moving towards my vision, right? So it's almost impossible to see back here, but I did plant a bunch of teeny tiny trees. So I'm not sure if you could see a blue tag out there, and that is for an American linden tree. And they are a native and they're really good for wildlife. They get pretty big. I think it's supposed to get like 40 to 60 feet tall. So this is one that I'm definitely going to come out and try to protect from any deer browse. We don't have a ton of deer just because we're in such an open setting, but we do get some, especially like in the evenings and nighttime. So I do want to try to protect it. And then once it grows big, it'll be actually great browse for them and just great for wildlife in general. And I'm hoping it'll also shade back here. I keep saying one day I will clean out this area. This is an old hangar pad that was here when we moved in for an airplane, and it has giant lilacs and it's overrun with wild grapevines, and it has some like old like wood and parts on it. So I want to use some of those actually, and then like just clear, like one day I want to clear it out. But again, it's kind of it's at the bottom of the list. So I'm sure it won't happen this year, but I thought it'd be nice to have that shade. And then the other thing I planted out here, which are also really hard to see, are some tiny, they're like this big, bare root balsam fir trees. And I planted those for Christmas trees actually, or winter solstice trees. We celebrate both. So my goal is to let those grow so that we can then harvest them for Christmas trees. So I've moved down closer to the pond and our solar canopy. So where we just were is that way, kind of behind you, and the solar canopy is behind you where we have some seating. Here I have my forest pansy redbud that I planted last year, and it has buds on it. Now it's very crooked. Like I said, so it had one of those like stakes that was lashed directly to it last year. I did not want to leave that on very long, so I took that off. We have a lot of wind, so I got a tree staking kit. This is the first one I will be staking up this year. But it's alive. It's alive and it's budding up, and I could not be happier about that. This gets like the dark red heart, the kind of deep purplish heart-shaped leaves, and it's beautiful. And it's gonna get, I think it can get up to 35 feet. I'm not sure if it will in this area, because we're at the very top of its zone for the red buds, like the very coldest zone for it. Back here we have our fire pit, so I do want to move it a little bit just in case it gets to that full height. I don't want the tree to be under the fire pit at all or even close to it. So yeah, one day we'll make this all like a more nice purposeful fire pit area where we have permanent seating out here and everything. So yeah, and we've got our pond behind us. I'm pretty sure this was man-made. This was here, obviously, when we moved in. And I love seeing the wildlife around it out here. I don't know if you can see all the red-winged blackbirds. They're the first to come. They come like end of February. I think we saw one this year. And yeah, very excited to have them out. They nest in cattails, other places as well, but they really like to nest in the cattails, so you'll hear them around here. We've got so many birds. Oh, I love it. So this part is the oldest part of the orchard. The pear tree, the white blossoming one that's beautiful there, was here when we moved in 2018. And there was also a peach tree that is now just a stump that we left it about 5 feet. I had my husband leave it about 5 feet, and we wrapped chicken wire around it so I could grow clematis up it. And the clematis is growing again, so that's beautiful. I mean, it's not blooming yet, but I'm glad it is growing. It's finding out and such. And then we have a hydrangea over here. Let me just show you. That was planted I think it was 2020 because that was a very dry year. We had the drought going on in 2020. And I planted a bunch of hydrangeas out here, and that's the only one that survived. And it's a vanilla strawberry, maybe. It's a panicle hydrangea, so it's like cone-shaped blooms that are white and then are creamy color, then turn pink up from the base. It's beautiful. I cut it back pretty hard this year. Panicles are ones that will bloom on new growth, so it should be good. And we have daffodils there. I believe it's Del Nassau and Apricot Whirl, and they are beautiful. They've been blooming at the same time. Some of them have gone over a little bit, but I'm just leaving them for right now. And we have more of those kinds. We have like a pink mix of daffodils going on in the orchard, which are just like peachy and creamy and pinky, and they're beautiful. Right here at the end is the youngest tree in this section of the orchard. This is a peach tree. I want to say it's a Red Haven. I'm not 100% sure on it, to be honest. It might be a contender. It's supposed to be a hardy variety of peach, although they are marginal in our area. And this is the first year I'm getting blooms from it. So it has blooms. It's gorgeous. I mentioned, I think earlier, about peaches. You don't need to have a pollinator for it. I do have another peach that I'll show you on the other end there. And it has buds, but it hasn't bloomed yet. It's kind of struggling. So I don't know what's going to happen with it. I'm leaving it for right now. Hopefully, it usually just takes a little while. So they're not blooming at the same time. But again, we should still get some peaches off of it. I do need to stake it up though, because it is leaning quite a bit. I think the pear tree is in a peak bloom right now, and it is gorgeous. And I don't know if you can hear it through my mic, but there are buzzing sounds all around. There's little tiny, I don't know if they're tiny bees or insects. They're kind of hard to get on camera, so I've been trying to get them, but I don't know if you can see them buzzing around and hopefully pollinating these pears. So we should get a good crop this year. Last year we had a very late freeze. It was May 18th and it got down to like 26, 27, and so that wiped out a lot of our fruit. So again, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that doesn't happen this year, and it'll be a good fruit year, and I can also preserve a lot more than we can get a lot of fruit off of a tree. But this pear tree is pretty well established here, and so when we have a good year, we have a really good year, and I give a bunch away. We eat a ton off the tree fresh, and then I make pies and crisps, and I love making pear butter as well. I make like a spiced pear butter that is delicious, so that will be what we're doing this fall, I hope. The tulips here are a blend that I planted 2 falls ago, not last fall, but the fall before, so I guess in 2022. They were fuller last year. Tulips don't tend to last as long, and I did plant some stuff in among them, but I'm actually quite pleased with how strongly they've come back. I didn't expect this much from them. They're definitely coming back stronger in certain areas than others, and this year, if I can, we'll have to see what the budget is. I want a lot of bulbs this year, so if I can, I want to come in and I want to add purple in here as well. So I'll probably get more pinks, especially around the peach tree, because I think that would look really pretty if they're up at the same time. And I've got pink tulips around the pink tree, and then purple's my favorite color, so I'd love to add more of that in here as well. There is a lot here going on in the orchard, so I'm going to point out a few things to you, and then we'll do future tours, and maybe I'll get some things that I might have missed. So we have 3 apple trees in this section, and these 3 apples and the peach at the end there were all planted in 2019, so they've been in here for 5 years now. The peach tree that we looked at a little bit ago, I think is 2020 or 21. I think maybe 21 is more accurate. So it's only been in for a couple years. And then we've got some random fruit around. So back behind me here amongst the tulips, I have gooseberries. I think one of them is a couple years old and one replaced one last year. And then I did transplant some honeyberries in here as well, across from the gooseberries. We've got a honeybee honeyberry that it actually was doing really well and then accidentally got mowed by people that come help with our mower guy, and it came back, so it's looking a little rough, but I moved it and it's still alive. And then there's an aurora here as well, a really tiny one, one of the newer ones. I did plant some pink lemonade blueberries in there, and I think at least one's alive, but I really need to weed around it. It was planted in a patch of yarrow, and now there's like grass and stuff in there. Anyway, I have not touched this at all again, so there's a lot of cleanup and kind of discovery that needs to be done in this area, and I'll get to it eventually. I just got a bunch of native pollinator plants plugs in the mail, so I'm planning on putting those out here, and so we'll at least clear the spaces for them soon. As I was saying, there are 3 apple trees in here. We have a Zestar apple, a Liberty apple, and a Duchess of Oldenburg apple. And these are summer bearing apples. So they bear on the earlier side. They're not great keepers. But they're good for eating fresh, and they're good for making pie. I've done that a little bit. We haven't gotten a ton in the past. We've gotten some. So I'm hoping this will be a big year. Again, last year, not so great. So there's that. I forgot to mention, I think earlier, the 3 apples that we have in the back by the playset are fall winter apples. So the Black Oxford is a really good storage apple. It actually tastes better after being stored for a month or 2. And then Calville d'Avir is a dessert apple. It's very sweet and tart. And then Golden Russet is great for fresh eating, but all of those bloom a little bit later than these, which you can actually kind of see. They're much more closed up bud stage as opposed to these that are starting to bloom. So our Duchess of Oldenburg is in full bloom, tons of flowers. I was nervous about this tree for a while because it had shown no signs of bloom. Now it was growing great, leafing out. Then last year we got a couple of blooms and I was so excited. So we did get a couple apples off her last year, and this year she is covered and the blooms are fully open right now. Absolutely beautiful. The Zestar is starting to open, and the Liberty has buds and hasn't quite opened yet. So I'm hoping it'll open to at least overlap with the Zestar a bit, because again, we need pollinators. So the idea was that these 3 would pollinate each other. And so as long as there's 2 open at a time, it's fine. We've got Zestar and Duchess over there are pollinating each other, and hopefully the Zestar will also cross over with the Liberty. I might see 1 or 2 open. We'll take a closer look. When the Liberty does bloom, it's going to be gorgeous because it's absolutely covered just like the Duchess is. So there is a ground cover weed that's growing all in the beds here, and I don't know, I think it's bee nettle, and I don't know if that's the same thing as ajuga. I need to look it up. The bees are loving it. There's all sorts of different kinds of little native bees and buzzers buzzing around them, and I actually don't mind it. It's one that's actually easy to pull up if I need to plant things. It doesn't seem to choke things out, so I'm thinking of leaving it in places where I'm not planting. So if I plant something, it's obviously going to come up, but otherwise I'm thinking of leaving that. My pollinator section that I originally planned is looking really sad. There's some things coming back, but a lot of them were not purposeful necessarily. But I did just get a bunch of more plants to put in here. So I'm hoping to give it a bit of a renovation this year. My currant is looking beautiful. It's a black currant. It's got so many little flowers, little blooms on it right now, and I'm so excited. I think I'm on my last jar of black currant jelly, so I want to make more of that this year because it is one of my favorites. I have lemon balm that is growing back. It's just hiding under some grass, and I have comfrey that's taken over, which I was warned would happen, so I'm going to be digging some of that out. Yeah, lots of work to do in this area, but it is just so beautiful. This is my peach that I planted in 2019, and you can see it looks a little rough, but these do have like buds on them. So I'm going to give it some time, like I said, and hopefully it will rebound. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that, make sure you click that thumbs up button below. It's important for YouTube to know that you like my videos, and then it'll show you and everybody else them some more. And if you haven't subscribed already, do that. Also let your friends know if you think they would like this video. I hope that you found that encouraging and inspirational. I absolutely love, love, love this time of year, and I wish I could have you all here with me to see the flowers and hear the birds and maybe have some iced tea and muffins. I hope you are all healthy and well where you are, and I'll talk to you later. Happy gardening, friends.